We definitely have people with good attitudes. For whatever reason, we've been very blessed in the fact that the people that are hired at this bank are kind of expected to be nice to each other. And we have a lot of customers that walk in and just say that they came in and they loved the fact that they could tell that we truly were happy.
Call the meeting to order and the turnover city manager goes through the agenda.
Thank you, Mayor.
Welcome, everybody. Happy New Year.
Yeah, Happy New Year. And it's okay, it can be belated, but yesterday was one of us' birthday.
You were the first person born.
Second baby, first born.
You were born in the broom closet, or what were you?
The girl cheated.
Vaccine or taxis?
Oh, vaccine or taxis.
Vaccine the what?
Vaccine or taxis.
We have some hearing issues that need to be addressed.
Yeah.
Well, happy birthday, Jim.
That's all right.
There's a call for you.
This is a cell phone zone.
I was working on it when it rang.
We probably called the meeting at 30 seconds too early. Well, let's go ahead.
Item number 1, approval of the minutes of the meeting held 2 weeks ago.
All right.
They look good.
Item number 2. Ordinance 7386, first reading. This is a ordinance to change the speed limits on North Coulter. Probably the most expedient way to describe such would be to turn to your map.
Waiting for Jerry Bird.
Mr. Bird today. The green line on the map is the 35-mile-an-hour speed limit, and what this change is doing. Today, that 35-mile-an-hour speed limit stops at White Poplar, and it switches to the 45. This is extending the 35 to, in effect, the last of the residential streets that dumps out onto North Coulter.
The school that goes in front of this Days of Olive, too.
Yeah, today it changes right on the backside of Days of Olive. That's good. Okay. Number 3, ordinance 7387. This is a vacation. We're vacating what's left of this alley over here, across from here. You'll recall 2 and 3 weeks ago we worked on the area just north of that where it kind of runs up into the track and the second would be in. So this is taking care of the last piece of that, requested by the applicant, Charles Lynch, who is the one that's redone that building over there. It's done so well.
That's great.
Kelly, anything of note? No. Any questions? Jerry come up with 2 different questions. Okay. Item number 4, resolution on parking restrictions in the Central Business District. Series changes. These were recommended or requested actually by the adjacent businesses or the property owners thereof. I think this is something that as we continue to see redevelopment and growth and change in the uses of properties around downtown, that we'll be looking at upon request. And those, of course, will run through the Traffic Commission, through the traffic engineer, back up to you. In this case, changing the existing 1 hour limit to 2 hours on the 100 block of Southeast 11, both sides of that. And this restriction currently is and will be proposed to only be effective from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m.
Is that just north of the chamber?
It's just south of the chamber.
I mean, south of the chamber?
South and east.
The other one.
The other north, and east.
Okay.
The other east.
The other one.
Yeah, there is there's a key map in here.
Yeah.
Chamber. We'll use up the other ones.
There's only a couple signs left there.
The next one's to remove the 2 hour restriction on 100 Southeast 9th Avenue, the south side therein, on the west half of that block.
And so it will be unrestricted.
That's by the architectural firm and by the burrito stop.
Yeah, it's Shavermaker and
the burrito stop.
Well, it's the west side of the alley from the burrito stop.
Oh, it is.
So it's Meggert and is that Condor Petroleum?
Yeah,
That's in that.
Magnolia.
Magnolia.
Not too far from the Park County Courthouse.
The next one
Yeah.
would be right there at the Carter County Courthouse.
Yeah.
300 block of Southeast 5th Avenue, north side. As the county's been able to reopen that courthouse, of course, they lost that parking lot that was on the north side of the old courthouse. That's now where all the building equipment has been relocated. So especially for staff and elected officials working in that building, the parking's kind of become a bit touchy. So
Primo.
hopefully this will help that out.
I wanted to ask you about this from a philosophical perspective. You know, as downtown development progresses, there's going to be this issue with retailers who want turnover. A lot of turnover.
Have to have it.
Yeah. And I'm just curious, is there the beginnings, the fledgling master plan of what's going to constitute a current concept of retail and where there's going to be rapid turnover? Are we going to see more of this as downtown becomes more crowded, that we're going to have less, changes in parking that are going to make it difficult for retail?
Of course, I noticed that all of these are going the other direction.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. That's my point.
They're more
I
liberal.
went and looked at these for that reason, Brian, and the ones that I saw, there's so little traffic in those areas, like the block east of the Chamber of Commerce, and that it's 11th Street, and there's nothing there except some parking. So what we're asking people to do is come and move their car every 2 hours, because there's no retail effort there at all. The thing is, we switch to retail, they'll do a study, and I think they're actually already commissioned a study on some of the parking kind of thing that they're talking about.
They're beginning to catalog and look at it, and I'll give you the one that comes up as an example of where we need to consider some changes. Would be around Chase Bank Building, where one side's 15 minutes, one side's 1 hour, one side's 2 hours. That building, thankfully, is getting busier and busier. It certainly has more of a retail environment on the first floor, but not so much for the rest of that building. So, yes, it's something we'll continue to look at in more depth. Some of it will be related to the traffic studies that we'll need to jump into that DAI has forwarded to us. As far as a plan for land use, it's all central business district zoned, so we're not able to say this is the retail corridor or multiple corridors. So I think for the time being, you'll see a few of these coming in on case.
And that's my concern. There's not any retail now, but as you can see the way things have progressed rapidly, there sure could be in 2 years. And once you basically give an entitlement to a parking spot, it's very difficult to take that away.
Well, I think those...
It is.
Well, but what's going to cause that is the retailer saying, I want turnover out here. So as the people that are out front, for instance, let's say that we put in the parking garage and the retail all gets filled around the parking garage, that all that area is filled. The guys outside there, it's going to be quick turn retail. They're going to all say, whoever that is, they're going to say, we want 1 hour parking, no more. Or 2 hour, but they're going to say they want 1 or 2 hour parking, and I think that's what's going to drive it. And I was worried about that when I saw these. I thought, this is not the way we're going to go. But after looking at them, we're pretty far removed from where the traffic patterns are changing now. Okay, I think as we see those entities go in, we're going to see some change, and I think we'll have to address them as they come up. I think some of these will be 2 and 3 and 4 years away.
Okay.
Hopefully they're sooner, but
okay. I noticed this one particularly did not go through the Traffic Commission. Right. It went through Jerry. It's a memo from Jerry Bird, not from the Traffic Commission.
Correct. It did go through the Traffic Commission and was recommended 6-0 by the Traffic Commission.
Okay.
But you're saying that we won't be doing this piecemeal as we get down the road. There's going to be some plan.
I think between now and when you see full changes in the land use, we will be doing several of them piecemeal. I think as land use has changed.
Yeah, and parking meters too.
Yeah, we've talked
There's
about
some
all
places
kinds
there'll be
with,
parking
in
meters.
the initial stages, we've talked about it.
As most of
We don't have a plan for parking meters today.
No, not today, no.
No.
But I mean, all the options are being explored.
Give an example. Most of the 4 big dispersal streets have very little or no restrictions on them. Some of those blocks that are either vacant or there's a building on them, it's just not being used. As those populate, I can see a need and a desire to try to modify the parking restrictions to suit their use. And I don't know that they'll all be the same when you take the entirety of from 11th to 2nd. running through downtown.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's good.
Okay.
I'm looking at it.
The segment from 10th to 7th.
Mm-hmm.
You know, with what you're going to look at today for the Tooten Totem, the downtown Tooten Totem, that's taking what today is a vacant block.
Yeah.
That's had really no need or cause to consider it, and maybe, depending on how that develops out, you'll want to. The block next to it's a city operation. The one past that's got residential and a vacant on it, so.
Well, certainly that's a good place, like the retail spots by the parking garage. If that ballpark goes in across the street, you certainly don't want to have parking there that's open all the time. That would be a place where you probably start with parking meters. I mean, it would be a good starting point, I would think logically.
Yeah, I think before we ever got to the meters, that would merit a pretty comprehensive study
Sure.
in and of itself. And
Sure.
a little bit that we've learned, you don't do those in isolated segments. You probably do them in a broader
Yeah.
deal. And I mean, you know, example, that's Austin and how they've been, you know, trying to manage their stuff, especially up and down Congress with meters.
Albuquerque has meters everywhere.
Well, hopefully there'll be a stronger need for it as we go along.
Okay.
More growth.
I hope
Too
so.
premature.
And I really hope that this also prompts other property owners, some of the residential properties, to come forth and visit with us about it. Most of the residential uses in downtown are newer uses, and I don't know that the parking restrictions are necessarily what they ought to be. I mean, they were put in when those buildings were used in a different manner. I think having that flexibility is going to be very important.
We've had some local residents downtown who want to talk about the parking issue. In fact, I returned that phone call.
Good.
Setting up a lunch with that person. Yeah, they're starting to talk about it now. So.
Any questions on this?
Nope.
Item 5, resolution, criminal justice grant application, just under $35,000. This is funding that the Governor's Office Criminal Justice Division has available. This would allow us to update and upgrade the software systems and the servers that manage the automated fingerprint system. If y'all recall, I believe it was about 2 years ago, James, 3 years ago.
We did, that was a data hub.
The hub?
Same concept, just different.
Okay. Regional project, it is hosted by the city, and it makes this information available, us to the region and the region to us. So this is a good opportunity to take their money while they have some money.
Well, the governor's still willing to give it.
And we're working with PRPC to do it for the regional.
Yes. A lot of these types of funds, a lot of the emergency management funds actually flow to the region and then back to the different localities.
Great.
Item number 6, resolution calling a public hearing. We're not determining these structures to be nuisance today. We are setting the date at which you will consider doing so. This is the next to the last step in that process.
I looked at both of them. We sure need to set a date.
Sure. We'll be doing so here.
Yeah, that's a bet.
And I hope you begin to see an accelerated flow of these things moving through. 'Cause we've got quite a stack of them on the deck.
Let's go.
Item number 7, appointments to boards and commissions. The first one, Construction Advisory and Appeals Board. This is the position that requires an engineer. I believe the recommended name here, should you choose to appoint, would be Mr. Dan Hinkie, who is a PE, and I believe it was Zachary.
How do you spell that?
Henke.
This one in.
Henke.
Be next to the Parks and Recreation Commission. We have 2 appointments needed here. I think we've had 2 gentlemen interested and willing to serve, if you would like to appoint. One being Mr. David Hudson, and one Dr. Rob Chapin.
David's good. Rob just finished your course. He's a graduate.
Reggie.
Reggie.
Right.
True. That's better.
I'll tell you what, that group will find out they've never worked so hard for those little cheap sandwiches we fed them.
Is that kind of what we're getting over here?
Oh, y'all are eating much better.
Oh, okay.
Much better.
Good. Just wanted to check.
Okay, consent agenda. Consent item A is continuing the never-ending purchase of radio equipment. Again, everything we do today now has to be the narrowband compliant equipment. The radios purchased here would be for the communications department, police, and then of course for solid waste. All routine items. Not my board, but HVAC purchase that comes through your local vendor here, WT Services. Item B, annual purchase of tires. A whole bunch of tires.
Well, I'll say.
And I've got, we're using a lot of our locals.
Commissioner Sims, Commissioner Eads probably remember we changed how this was bid out about 4 years ago, give or take, to where we just started using, and I can't now remember what it's called, UTG, or there's a category code the federal government uses for tires, the DOT uses for tires, and we now buy based on that. Doing so really is where we started to see a lot more of the local vendors being able to step in and bid. Prior to that, we were using more of the OE spec, original equipment spec bids.
Which were really narrow.
Which are very narrow. Prices here are starting to go back up. I would note, though, that those prices had actually gone down and gone down by pretty good numbers the last 2 years. So we're still in good shape, but you're beginning to see the creep. Item C, Center City Tax Reinvestment Zone Number 1 Developer Agreement for Jamal Enterprises. We have some guests here with us today. Ms. Carol Autry representing the Tiers, and you're the vice chair currently. Carol, if you'd like to come up. We have 3 representatives from Citizens over here with us today as well. Carol, do you want to run through this? You want Kelly and I to run
Kelly's
through
going
it?
to actually run through the
And you'll answer
project
the hard
itself,
questions.
and I'll be here for as a resource after that.
Okay. Well, thank you all collectively for being here today. Kelly?
Chair, on your agenda today for consideration is a request by Jamal Enterprises, which is the entity that actually will own the property and then lease that property for the operations of a two-total convenience store. The request is for a 20-year tax rebate agreement, and that would be based on the development of the retail store, and then because of that development, the incremental increase from what the property is valued currently to what it's valued once that store is constructed. That increase in property value, 90% of the property tax paid on that incremental value increase would be rebated back to the property owners for a period of either 20 years or up to $494,000, whichever occurs first. So it's either capped at 20 years or that amount. The project itself really consists of, what you're going to see is basically the same footprint of what their suburban stores look like, but that's about where the comparisons end. The actual materials that are going to be used for the building is going to be brick, some masonry stone. They will also have a masonry kind of a half-screen wall around the perimeter of the property that helps kind of define that the pedestrian pathways from the actual parking lots. They have extended sort of a portiche type structure out that goes over their drive-through where normally they just have the window. So it's going to be a much more, it's not going to look like the suburban store. It's got a lot of masonry components added into it. And you take that in combination with the streetscape elements that will be around the perimeter and the right-of-way, which include the wider new, wider pedestrian sidewalks, the pedestrian street lights. There's going to be 21 new pedestrian street lights, 35 new trees. The signage is going to be different. It's monument-type signs. So you combine all of that, and you're going to have a much more aesthetically pleasing, urban-oriented type development. What came before the Tiers Board was a request for the tax abatement agreement, and basically what they were required to do by the downtown urban design standards were going to be applied and required for only about 2/3 of that block. And part of the discussion that was with the Tiers Board was that, number one, they were taking the chance to come down here, try to do this store, and the expenses that were incurred for some of these requirements were much more than what they normally experience. But the fact that they were going to go ahead and do that, but technically they were only required to do those around that 2/3 of the property that they were actually developing. That northern third did not have to be landscaped, but in the discussions, they agreed to go ahead, and if this agreement would be approved, they would go ahead and also landscape, install all of the streetscape elements, the pedestrian lights, the street trees, and sidewalks, all the way around the block. So on all 4 sides instead of just 2/3, the 3 sides. What that would also do would start piecing together some of these pieces that you're seeing with downtown. You've got the Happy State Bank project that is directly south across 10th Street from this property. That's fully done in the streetscape elements. This would also be a completely done block. And then you put that together with some of the stuff that we're hoping to get done with the Transportation Enhancement Program grant. That would create a consistent, fully done block, streetscape elements along the block from basically 9th all the way to 6th Street. And then we also hope to get that 6th Street portion right there between Buchanan and Pierce. And then you've got the county that's already done there. So starting to see a lot of places that are doing that. This would just be another large block, full block, that would help complement what's already been done and help start connecting those pieces. That was one for the board. The board discussed requiring, along with that, to try to get the bulb outs, or we call them curb extensions now, on the Buchanan side. And because along with that transportation enhancement grant, if we get that, that will be done along the entire Buchanan spot. And it creates a much more safer pedestrian environment having those curb extensions. And if we get that grant, and we didn't have these, because they're not required, they're just an option. And they agreed that they would certainly try to make that a part of that Buchanan side. And then if the state enhancement program grant comes along, then we have a fully developed block, not only the streetscape elements, but also include the curb extensions as well. But that would only be required on that Buchanan side.
So there would be 2 then, curb
extensions?
extensions?
2 on the northeast and southeast side. And the one on 10th Street would actually just be a half, basically, because of 10th Street. We don't. It's not quite wide enough to have one bulb out on the 10th Street side. It would only be on the Buchanan side.
Be mirrors of how they're built on the 2 corners at Happy.
Right.
Okay.
They're the one-sided extension.
Okay.
So that was the request. We got a favorable vote by the Tiers Board, by unanimous vote. We did take it to, as required by the ordinance that set up the Tax Increment Reinvestment Zone Board and the Reinvestment Zone itself for Potter County's participation, to run that through Potter County Commissioners Court and let them review the project and comment on the project. And we did that. And the discussion included some comments by Commissioner Murguia on 2 things, really. That she wanted to make sure that during the application process and TIER's board discussion, that the financial situation of the applicants were part of that process and part of the discussion and part of the consideration. She felt that with Toot & Totems obviously being successful at what they do, maybe it wasn't necessary to provide such an incentive for them to locate downtown. So she had concerns about that. She also had concerns about maybe with agreeing to such a long-term, a 20-year commitment, that maybe that might have some impact, a negative impact on future requests for incentives. And I tried to answer that one by saying that the one good thing about this type of an agreement is that it's an incentive that's done on the back end of the project. This incentive doesn't happen, the rebate doesn't happen if they don't do what they're supposed to from their end of the deal. They have to do the project. And then number two, the only thing that's being rebated back is the increase in taxes that is occurring from the project itself. So if somebody's worried about taking away money from future projects, you're really taking away. You're talking about taking away money that doesn't currently exist because that project doesn't currently exist. So if anything, with the 10% that is going into the tax increment rebate or the tax increment fund, there's actually more money in that fund for projects than if this project didn't happen. So I tried to explain that.
How was that accepted? Was that understood very thoroughly by the commission?
I think it was understood by the commission. As a matter of fact, Commissioner Kirkwood really kind of, once he heard that, he thought, well, that makes much more sense. Those were really the two concerns that she had, and she really just wanted to make sure that those financial type of considerations were taken into account through the application process.
And you did tell her that we had done that from the very beginning of TIERS.
Right. And I tried to explain also that the point of those types of agreements was that for the first ones on the block, so to speak, the ones that take the risk, the ones that take the initiative to do things first, that maybe those are the ones that need a little. They're the ones taking the risk, so they don't know for a fact that it's going to be successful. And if that's the incentive that makes their gap return on investment, whatever you want to call it, gets that to a point where they do the project, and that's what needs to be done. But at some point down the line, that once you start having things occur in the downtown area, that maybe you don't have to offer those kind of incentives. Maybe you cut that back to 50%, 20%, something like that. So you don't, just because you do it once or twice doesn't mean that you always have to do that from now on. It's just how you think you need to get things happening in the downtown area. Judge Ware commented that he thought maybe a 10-year agreement might be appropriate for this type of a project. And so we discussed that for a little bit. And then at the end of the 10 years, if they, we thought that was something that needed to be extended for 10 more years, that maybe that was a better way to do it. And I tried to explain in my experience at the City of Dallas that when you try to do a project, the more certainty that you have up front, the better. And they were asking for a 20-year, and giving them a 10-year and then maybe another 10 years is something certainly is not there. And
hard to
maybe
do
I'll
with
do it,
finance
maybe I
companies.
won't.
Well, the finance companies are looking at that too, because they look at their perspectives.
Right. Again, it's something to maybe consider, and as you get on down the road with more development, maybe that's something that you start looking at, maybe a 50% rebate for 10 years for
I really like the deal. I mean, I think it's a great deal for downtown because it not only generates that new money that we give back to them for a period of time, but it generates all the sales taxes we haven't even talked about that come into the city coffers that aren't being created on that piece of barren land now with nothing but trash until they start cleaning it up. And so we've turned a trash heap into a producer of property tax that's rebated for a period of time and sales tax money that goes on forever. Once the property tax is fulfilled, and that is one question I have, 494, 195, what predicated that number?
That number is based on the applicant's estimate of the property value after the construction. So if you take the property values, 90% of that over a 20-year period, that's where they get that number. So that number is based off of their estimate of about a $3 million.
Okay, of what the tax cost
Property
would be.
value.
Okay, I got it.
Tax.
Okay.
Based on
So if that property value is a little less than that, they're going to get it back a little less. If it's a little more than that,
Okay, so that's not a hard number.
that's not a hard number.
Well,
it is capped.
Other than what it's capped
It's
at.
capped. It's capped.
It's capped, so it's either
20 years
494 or 20 years.
494 or 20 years, or if the
Whichever.
actual numbers don't come in that high, it's less than that.
Yes.
Maybe it goes
They
to
go
20 years and they don't get that much.
It still stops.
But the point is that it's all money that doesn't exist today, that they're creating because they're willing to take this chance. And none of that's going to come in at all unless somebody takes a chance on that piece of property. I think this principle is important for the whole downtown, that we've created $60 million in building permits over the last few years that have increased the property values downtown, and property values gone up by what I was told 37%, where they had not gone up 2% over a 10-year period prior to that. And so we're doing something that's very positive for downtown, and we are using outside people and local people, whoever's willing to do this. It doesn't matter to me if it's outside. I don't care if they're from Hoboken or from whatever street in town they live on. We're happy to take that push to rebuild our downtown and affect everything else. I think it's a great project.
Well, and the other thing from my perspective, because when we started talking about all this downtown development, years ago, one of the things that I kept saying is, we can't even buy gasoline downtown. There's not even a place to leave your car and get your oil changed anymore. If you live downtown, you can't go buy a loaf of bread or a gallon of milk or a six-pack of beer. Excuse me. Because you have to get in your car and go get it. And the whole idea of livability downtown is to have some place where you can walk to do those things. And so, and besides that, it's cleaned up downtown, in my opinion. I told someone that we had a company that was building a service station, the Tooth and Totem, and I had to explain what Tooth and Totem was, and they said, I don't think there's a service station in downtown Houston. I didn't think of one, so maybe it's new again for this type of business to be encroaching on downtown areas. But I think we have to look at it, as Paul said, as a quality of life thing, and we're doing something that will be good for the workers downtown and for people who will be living downtown.
And that's another part of it, not only the sales tax, but it creates about 14 jobs too.
Yeah.
So
And the 10% is the reason that goes back into the coffers of Tiers is a good way to pay it forward too.
Yeah, and we'll use that again for another project. We look at each and every one of these projects on their own merit and where they are at this time and what we need. And one of the drivers of what we think that we need to do incentives for is to try to get more residential downtown. That's one of the goals. More retail, more residential. The more activity you have, the more that's going on, the more vibrant and alive your downtown is. And we've had a concept of trying to do whole blocks because it's so much cheaper while the project is open anyway than it would be to come back and do it again later. So we're pleased with this project. I think it's going to be a big addition to the...
Again, the utilities underground too in this process.
Yeah, the
Again, all
utilities.
the utilities underground in this block.
Just to be clear, the 494,000 is an estimated cap. But if you don't get the appreciation in the values that reflect that amount, it's not 494.
In 20 years, if they've only gotten 400,000, it's over.
It stops.
It stops. If it's only 300,000, it stops.
Yeah, I didn't want to get to the 20 and find the documents were written in a way where we still owed somebody $110,000.
It's an either or, whichever
It's a
occurs
good point,
first.
and it stops.
And
that's a tested document.
Okay.
And we hope they hit it before 20 years.
Sure.
Now, the school tax is not rebated, so that will go to the public schools' coffers.
Okay.
And that's the other side of it. If they hit the 494 in year number 10, then it's over.
Yeah, it's valued at $7 million.
And I hope we have that kind of a problem.
That would be a wonderful thing.
The second question is now the original design standards, I've slept more than one night since I reviewed those. Those do not include bulb ants on your floor.
They're
totally optional. At the behest of the majority owner of the block, or what?
The owner.
The property owner.
Property
Well,
owner.
but there's usually not a single property owner. There's usually multiple
Well,
property
it's
owners.
whoever's
involved.
changing
In
that
that
street.
case, it would be who's doing the project that requires the streetscape to go in.
This is just 2 pages.
But most of the ones that have been done today have been at least half blocks.
So that wasn't a variance in design standards. That was just an option.
No, and we could still do bulb outs anywhere we want downtown. It's our right of way.
It's all right.
I mean, it's
I'd
the
rather
city's
do
right
road
of way.
extensions.
Yeah, whatever. It's like ballpark or whatever.
Okay.
I would like to say when you said the schools don't, are going to be paid taxes, that's public schools because Amarillo College is
And
part
we're
of
part of
yours.
it, definitely is rebated.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We
And
want to
the
thank
public
you.
schools are
You're
not
you're
allowed
welcome.
to.
You can take
By
my
law,
law.
choose the region.
Heavily paid.
Mm-hmm.
And I will be recusing myself from the discussion on this issue or the vote.
I think if you just took the public improvements where the public is from outside, in the right of way, you'd probably come up with a figure pretty close to this. If you just took the trees, the sidewalk, the improvements that are going to change that whole entire area, just outside in the right of way area, you're probably going to with a number larger than what this is.
We did just kind of a quick estimate back in the day, and it was about $250,000 to $300,000 for a half block for the entire streetscape element.
That one side.
And this is the whole block.
One side.
That's one side.
Say that figure again.
That's one
Kevin.
side.
It's one
About
side.
550,000, somewhere around there.
For the whole.
But that depends on what you run into on drainage and all sorts of other things. So it's an estimate.
And the more footage you do at once, the
Yeah.
cheaper it is.
It looks great.
Some of the elements, here's the porta that I was talking about that comes out over the drive-through, the screen wall that runs around the perimeter of the building area.
Yeah, see, they're doing even more than the design
Monument top
standards.
signs.
The warehouse kind of look on the building, so it matches other warehouses down
There's
there.
architectural elements incorporated within the building, the columns, the architectural features, so it's going to be a good looking building.
Think about driving into downtown 3 years ago, before Happy was there, before this was there, and now what it's going to be a year from now. Just driving into our downtown, the greeting is just so much better.
And Kelly, would you show them a little bit on the north side there? 'Cause that really is just overflow area for them right now.
They really didn't
They weren't going to do anything.
They really didn't have any plans for this area right here, but they are looking for, they're looking at and already have Cleve Turner looking at a design for maybe some park improvements here. But they are going to, if this gets approved, this entire area right here would go ahead and be done with the streetscape elements, and then they are looking at sodding this and making that a kind of an open space feature. And correct me if I'm wrong, but they're not saying exactly what they may do, but they are looking at doing something with this area right here to make it almost like a park-like feature.
But you could put something there too. You could put a building there if you chose. That'd be fine. Produce some more revenue.
I like the green space. No different from green space.
We'd like both.
Heard nothing positive comments on just the use itself.
That's great.
Did anybody take before pictures? I guess they did.
Yeah, there's some before pictures.
We get some of the overhead utilities in those blocks, because that's sure going to look different.
Yeah, love that.
Well, and Toot and Totem undertaking this project is allowing the city to go ahead and get a head start on our eventual remodel at the Atlas building and get ours underground. So you'll actually lose, in effect, 2 blocks of overhead utilities. In fact, I think they'd be done if we hadn't had the cold they've run before concrete.
I think you're due a thanks for investing in our downtown.
Yeah,
Thank you. Thank you.
City employees can go get some stuff over there now.
Well, I think the first set of dedicated customers is right on the other side of 90.
No, it's after 5.
About 90 people that work in there.
Technically, the Potter County Commission recommended its support of the request 4-1. No, I'm sorry, 3-1. 3-1. Commissioner Hahn wasn't there.
And there's just a consultative role.
It's just advisory.
Okay.
Thanks, Kelly.
Good job.
Thanks, Carol.
Thank you.
I think you'll get that in 3 to 1.
You know, this particular way of funding doesn't take anything out of the Tiers Conference either.
No, it's a great way for us to use an incentive because we don't put any upfront money.
Thank you all.
Happy New Year. And I think that's an important point to consider. The very earliest of these types of projects that the Tiers did had both the rebate and a grant to do the streetscape improvements. So it's money out of hand and a future. There's no money out of hand for this project. Not for the Tier.
We've used a lot of money, so it's nice to have this.
A lot of money.
Still use this.
And you said if the state funding for the streetscape comes through, that they're amenable to putting full balance on the Buchanan side of that?
They're putting totally installing their two on the Buchanan side
Now.
So that enhancement grant will pick up, I believe it will take you from 11
to 6.
No, actually, about when all that's finished.
Because I could see more about on that diagram.
They're not on the diagram.
They're not on the
That's the diagram that was their application.
Yes, we modified that. In our
They are doing it for sure.
They are
Was that
doing
one of
it.
the things that y'all brought up and discussed?
Yes, we asked for them to do that, so that would be a continuous look down that street if we get that enhancement
And
grant.
there's going to be a lot of foot traffic there in and around the ballpark. That's a major access, and you're going to want that. So
Yes.
Both sides.
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Well, and
It's going to be so nice.
we get that enhancement grant, you start changing, from 10th to 7th, it's pretty rough. You know, some of the old sidewalks through there, they're between 7th and 8th. It's that old multi-level, but I've never known why that sidewalk's built that way. There was something there before Coke that's why that was done like that. And it just be a phenomenal aesthetic change to downtown.
Well, and I think I can say this without crossing the lines. Think about the visitors that we have to our city coming in from the airport.
They have to come up, but
And the way that they come to access the courthouse or the financial centers or city hall or whatever.
The Marriott Hotel. Every one of them will go past there.
Yeah, it's a good deal. They're paying it now and they're paying it forward.
Very well.
okay, any questions on that? Item D, dedication and acceptances, 3 minor transactions there that we ask for your approval for. The first 2 are for bus stops, and the final is for the warning floodgates over here at 3rd, so on the railroad.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, good.
Not looking forward to flooding, but I should have some rain.
Yeah, we got there some
Floodgates
rain.
need to close. So, Mayor, the final item on your active agenda for today, during the regular meeting, will be a presentation, again by Sonia, showing off some of the PR items, some of the public education items for your handheld cell phone. Again, tomorrow is when that goes into effect. The police department will do the 30-day warning period for that. And then in February, the tickets will become real.
I was exiting off the Canyon E-way here. There was a lady back over the lane when I texted on her phone. Absolutely.
Well, I heard some spots, they weren't ours, they were, I guess, being done as PSAs on one of the radio stations this weekend, telling people that this was coming, and then our stuff will start tomorrow. And Sonia, I think, is going to run one of the radio commercials for us. So you'll see that in some of the other things and some of the media buys that will be going on. See what we can get.
I've got a procedural question. We'll have to remove Jim's going to remove C. This is my consent agenda item. And then the second vote on C alone would be Jim's. So I guess it'd go Lily. Okay.
Cut me out.
Cut you out.
Keep me out of jail. You just got cold.
Questions on the agenda? Okay, going back to the first page, following up on the discussion we had 2 weeks ago. That's hard to say. We meet every week. 2 weeks ago with the towing companies, with the requested changes and amendments, and of course their request to increase the fees on the towing contract. You'll notice they're not here. Dean, Captain Lancaster, all the towing companies have been working in those intervening 2 weeks to try to come up with the information that we had discussed in here that you had asked us to get. That resulted in us having a meeting this morning, specifically and only to discuss their request to change those fees. We met for just under 2 hours. I think it was a good discussion. Collectively, I think we've all agreed, the staff and the towing companies, that we need another week or two. And the goal is to come back to you guys. The contract part of it is done and reflects the give and take from both parties. That's pretty significant in some cases. Of course, the fee increase that they asked for, and I think the mayor asked some good questions about it, was pretty significant, about 40%. So we met today to kind of work on that, look at some information from other towns and some information specific to Amarillo and what it takes to run those. So you should see that next week, if not the week after that. They'll be back then to talk to you.
Good.
Okay.
Good.
With that, if we could, Mayor, I'd ask for a closed session. We're probably running pretty good on time here.
All right. Good to see you.